Here's a graph that showcases how effective offenses were at scoring year by year. Points per drive along the x-axis and score percentage along the y-axis. The NFL started tracking this back in 1998, and it's a good indication into how productive NFL offenses are. The worst year of offense using these metrics was back in 1999, with the lowest score percentage and points per drive. A year that featured 26 quarterbacks throw for 10 or more interceptions. 2008 was a year that was ahead of its time, being more efficient than modern offenses like 2013 and 2017. A year that had 4 running backs rush for 15 touchdowns or more, which has only been done 2 other times in this time frame. And the best year offensively was in 2020, with the highest score percentage and points per drive since 1998. With one of the most iconic Rookie of the Year races, and a season that also featured a 2,000-yard rusher. Now there is one season that is not charted on this graph, and it's this past 2024 season. A year a lot of you may have not realized how dominant it was. Because over the past 27 years, there has only been one season more effective at scoring than this past year. 2024 ranks just behind 2020 in score percentage and points per drive. But I'd argue this season offensively was a whole lot better, and not enough people are talking about it. I think everyone can acknowledge the type of historic individual seasons we watched this year. But for this amount to be in the same year and to this caliber is something we've never seen before. From quarterbacks to receivers to running backs to veterans to even rookies. I legit believe we are going to look back in 10 to 15 years time and be shocked at how many all-time seasons were in the same year. Prior to this season, there have been 19 seasons in NFL history where a quarterback had a completion percentage of 70 or better. This is a rare accomplishment for a quarterback, similar to throwing for 5,000 yards in a season, which has only been done 15 times. Being this efficient on a game-to-game basis is not easy. Yet this season, 5 quarterbacks made it look like it was. Yes, 5 quarterbacks this past season had a 70% completion percentage or higher. Joe Burrow, Jared Goff, Tua Tagovailoa, Baker Mayfield, and Geno Smith all reached this threshold, which means that over 20% of quarterback seasons that reached 70% completion percentage or higher happened in the 2024 NFL season. And somehow, that's only the beginning. On March 12, 2024, a decision would be made that would create an offense that would reach heights we could only imagine of. The Ravens would sign Derrick Henry to a 2-year deal to form a backfield you thought was something you would only see in Madden. A read option with the greatest rushing quarterback of all time, and a Hall of Fame running back that happens to be 6'3" and 250 pounds. I mean, genuinely, how are you supposed to stop an offense like that? Spoiler alert, they couldn't. This Ravens duo broke offensive barriers like the Raiders break my heart year in and year out. I'm sure everyone watching this video is familiar with the greatest show on turf, the Rams offense during the late 90s and early 2000s that featured a Hall of Fame quarterback, running back, and 2 wide receivers. Yes, I'm considering Torrey Holt a Hall of Famer because damn it, how is this career not one? Anywho, the Rams set the record for most yards per play during the 2000 season at nearly 7 yards. An offense dominated by 2 of the greatest wide receivers ever and the greatest pass-catching back of all time, which many fans consider to be the greatest offensive season ever. Well, this past 2024 Ravens team was not too far behind. With maybe the scariest rushing backfield of all time, the Ravens managed to achieve 6.85 yards per play this season, which ranks second all time, only 0.13 behind that Rams offense. Although these two teams were very different, the Rams moved their way down the field behind an all-time passing game with just under 5,500 yards, with Holt, Bruce, and Falk combining for nearly 4,000 of that. And this past year's Ravens team did it on the ground. And I'm going to be honest, the statement I just made about the Ravens maybe being the scariest rushing backfield of all time is a lie. Because they aren't maybe the best, they are 100% the scariest backfield ever. Here is a graph with the greatest rushing quarterback running back duos of all time, with a minimum of 600 yards for a quarterback and 1,000 yards by a running back. Running back rushing yards on the x-axis and quarterback rushing yards on the y-axis. The most rushing yards in a season by a quarterback is Lamar Jackson back in 2019, although his running back had nearly 200 less yards than him. The only 2,000-yard rusher on here with a quarterback that reached over 600 yards is Saquon from this past season, with these two combining for the most rushing yards by a quarterback-running back duo in NFL history. That is, if Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry didn't exist. Yeah, they were that good. A near 2,000-yard running back and a 1,000-yard quarterback. I can confidently say, I don't know if we'll ever see something like this again. Because even though this Ravens ground game was historically good, I think Lamar's individual season may have even been better. Lamar Jackson broke onto the scene in 2019, winning his first MVP and putting up legit video game type numbers. He led the NFL in passing touchdowns while only throwing 6 interceptions, and also happened to shatter the quarterback rushing record, reaching heights we didn't think were possible by a quarterback. And I mean this with no exaggeration. Lamar Jackson may have 2 top 5 quarterback seasons of all time. Because in my opinion, this past year from Jackson was actually better than his first MVP. He was putting up legit prime Aaron Rodgers type numbers through the air and prime Michael Vick numbers on the ground. Except these aren't those players type of numbers. This is simply Lamar Jackson being Lamar Jackson. He became the first ever quarterback in the PFF era to have a 90 passing and rushing grade when including the playoffs, a 94.9 passing grade, and a 90.4 rushing grade. To put into perspective how insane that is, Patrick Mahomes in his 2018 MVP campaign, where he threw over 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns, achieved a 92.2 passing grade. And a recent dominant running back season by Jonathan Taylor in 2021, which featured him rushing for over 1,800 yards and 18 touchdowns, notched a 90 rushing grade. So yeah, Lamar Jackson this past season was better through the air than Patrick Mahomes that season, and better on the ground than Jonathan Taylor was in that season. Yeah, he was that good. 41 passing touchdowns, over 4,000 passing yards, and 900 rushing yards. And this right here was the cherry on top. Lamar Jackson achieved a passer rating of 119.6 this past season, the 4th highest recorded passer rating in NFL history. So all in all, Lamar Jackson became the first 4,000 passer, 800 rusher, the first 4,100 yard passer and 900 rusher, the first 90-90 ever, tied the record for most perfect passer ratings in a game by a quarterback at only 28, achieved the 4th highest passer rating in a season, and had the 7th most rushing yards by a quarterback in a season. We witnessed the greatest dual threat season ever, and somehow this didn't result in an MVP. And you want to hear something crazier? You could argue that this wasn't even the best offensive duo in their own division. The Bengals offense, led by Joe Burrow and Ja'Marr Chase, were just as historic as the Ravens. The connection between these two felt nearly unstoppable. And I mean, to be fair, Chase said it himself.
Nah, I'm open. I'm always open.
And that's exactly what he was this season. I want to show you numbers from a random wide receiver this past season, and I want you to guess who it is. 21 catches, 457 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Now, considering these numbers, it's most likely a wide receiver 3 with the low amount of catches, but also probably a deep threat considering the yards per catch and touchdowns. You got your answer ready? Well, if you guessed Ja'Marr Chase in 2 games versus the Ravens this year, you'd be correct. Your eyes do not deceive you. He had 450 yards and 5 touchdowns in 2 games. The most yards by a wide receiver versus a single team in one season in NFL history. Ja'Marr Chase is now tied at 2nd place with the most 175-yard games in a season. And these dominant performances led him to become the 5th Triple Crown winner since the merger. 127 catches, over 1,700 yards, and 17 touchdowns. Truly one of the most dominant wide receiver seasons ever. Oh yeah, and the guy throwing him the ball was kinda good too. Joe Burrow led the NFL in passing yards and passing touchdowns this season, joining Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady as the only quarterbacks to throw for 43 touchdowns or more and less than 10 interceptions in a season. And a lot of fans believe Burrow is a player that could win MVP, and with a season like this, you may have thought he was the one who achieved the award over Lamar. Except he never really had a chance to win this. The Bengals scored 30 or more points 8 times this season, a historic mark behind their historic duo. Although their record in games when scoring 30 or more was 4-4, resulting to them having a 9-8 record and missing the playoffs. One of the best duo seasons of all time didn't even get a chance to showcase their talents in the postseason. But there was one player who was able to do that, and his name was Saquon Barkley. When Barkley signed with the Eagles, I think everyone realized the type of damage he would be able to do behind that offensive line. But I'm not sure if anyone quite imagined this. As everyone knows, the Eagles were crowned champions this past February, and although winning a Super Bowl takes all 22 players on each side of the ball, Saquon Barkley was that missing piece that took this team over the top. In fact, you could have a real argument that this was the greatest running back season ever. The amount of records and historic numbers Saquon put up this season was truly unbelievable. Barkley is the definition of a home run threat. That's what he's been his entire football career, even going back to his college days. But he took it to a new level this season. This past year, Saquon scored 20 total touchdowns, and here's the length of each of those. He had 6 touchdowns from inside the 5-yard line, and 3 between 19 and 11 yards. And outside of those, he scored 4 from 20 to 39 yards. Although he scored 0 touchdowns between the 41 and 59-yard line. That's because Barkley broke the record for most 60-yard touchdowns in a season at 7. 7! That included 3 being from 70 yards or more. And with this amount of historic explosive plays in a season, Barkley also broke the record for most 145-yard rushing games by a running back with 8, reaching new heights that we believed weren't possible by a running back. This is a player that couldn't get a contract he deserved from the team that drafted him. The running back position has become one of the most devalued positions in all of sports, and Saquon put that all to bed. As everyone knows, Barkley rushed for over 2,000 yards in the regular season. But when you account for his playoff rushing yards at 499, his total would be 2,504, which, in case you're curious, is the most ever by a running back in a season, passing Terrell Davis, the greatest rushing season of all time. And I'll finish this video off with this. This past NFL draft broke a record for most consecutive offensive players selected, with the first 14 picks of the draft being an offensive player. So we should have been able to guess what we were in for, because these guys did not disappoint. Here are the top 10 receiving leaders from this past season. At the top, you have the Triple Crown winner in Ja'Marr Chase. Behind him is the best wide receiver in football in Justin Jefferson. You then have a rookie in BTJ with nearly 1,300 yards. The next 3 receivers on the list are Drake London, Amon-Ra, and Jerry Jeudy. And following these players are back-to-back rookies in Malik Nabers and Brock Bowers. And rounding out the top 10 is CD at 9 and none other than another rookie in Ladd McConkey. The most 1,000-yard rookie receivers in a season, except each one had over 1,100 yards, just to rub it in a little. And the quarterbacks of this class were not so bad either. Jayden Daniels, the rookie of the year, except he's not. He's not just the best rookie from this past year. He's the greatest rookie of all time, breaking records left and right, and leading a team that had 0 playoff hopes all the way to be 1 game away from the Super Bowl. Daniels' end-of-season statistics look like this: the highest completion percentage, most rushing yards, and most wins and touchdowns by a rookie in NFL history. We've never seen a player like this before, and probably never will again. Now I'm going to speed run everything offensively that occurred this season, so buckle up. This year we watched 2 of the greatest offensive duos ever, a top 5 quarterback season of all time, a Triple Crown wide receiver, arguably the greatest rushing season we've ever seen, the greatest offensive rookie class, the greatest offensive rookie ever, the second best offense in yards per play in history, 5 quarterbacks to have a 70% completion percentage or better. Next highest season had 3 quarterbacks threw for 40 touchdowns this season, done only 2 other times in history. 3 running backs with over 1,925 total yards, tied second most in a season, and the second highest points per drive and score percentage since 1998. That, ladies and gentlemen, may be the greatest offensive season we will ever watch. Hope everyone who watched this video learned something and also enjoyed. I'm out. Peace.